You have been lied to about how this country works. Not in some dramatic secret society, candles and robes way. In the boring, daily classroom version of reality that everybody gets taught and nobody questions. The version that says you vote, your representative listens, and democracy happens. That is the cover story. It is what you tell children so they grow up into compliant adults who believe the system is responsive to them. Here is the actual structure. Political power in this country is a ladder, and the distance between the bottom and the top is not measured in votes. It is measured in dollars and proximity. At the bottom is you. At the top is a group of people so small and so wealthy that they do not need to run for anything, because the people running already answer to them. This video walks up every level, what each one costs, what each one actually buys, and the hidden structure nobody in charge wants you to see clearly. Some of this is going to sound like a conspiracy. It is not. It is just what the system looks like when you stop pretending it is something else. Let's go. This is where you live, and it is the level designed to make you feel important while giving you the least actual power of anyone in the entire structure. You vote, you feel civic, you put on the sticker, you tell your coworkers. And then the same people win, the same bills pass, the same industries get what they want, and the same problems you voted to solve quietly remain problems. Ask yourself why. A Pew study found that 70% of Americans believe the people in their own district have too little influence on their own representative. Not too little influence on Washington in general. Too little influence on the specific person elected by them to represent them with their votes. And 70% of Americans intuitively understand that is not actually what is happening, because it is not. This bottom level exists to produce legitimacy. Elections are the paperwork the system needs so that the outcomes it was going to produce anyway can be labeled democratic. You vote, somebody wins, the machinery keeps running. Whether you showed up or not, the results for the people at the top of this ladder are already mostly baked in. Above the voter is the organized citizen. Unions, movements, community organizing. This level is real. It has teeth. The 40-hour work week, civil rights, every labor protection you enjoy were not gifts from politicians. They were ripped out of the system by organized people refusing to leave quietly. But notice something. Every victory at this level required hundreds of thousands of people, years of sustained effort, beatings, firings, jail time, sometimes death, to force changes that a single billionaire can undo with a phone call and a donation now. The effort required to move the system from below is exponentially larger than the effort required to move it from above. That is not a coincidence. The rules of organizing, protesting, and unionizing have been quietly tightened over the last 40 years, while the rules for corporate and billionaire influence have been quietly loosened. You are working harder to have less impact. They are working less to have more. And the people who benefit from this arrangement will happily tell you, in between bites of their $80 steak, that the real problem is that you are just not civically engaged enough. Here is where the mask starts slipping. To run for the US Senate, you need to raise an average of $26 million. For the House, $2.8 million. And those are just the winners. Losers still spend millions and go home with nothing. Stop and really think about that. The people who write the laws that govern your life have to raise more money to get elected than most Americans will earn in their entire lifetimes. And they are not raising it from you. The $25 you chipped in because you liked their energy on social media is statistical noise. They are raising it from the people above, who are not donating for fun, which means the person you voted for, on the day they took office, already owed their career to a small group of wealthy donors. Every decision they make from that day forward carries the invisible weight of not upsetting those donors. Not because they are evil, because if they lose those relationships, they lose re-election. Political survival in this country is structurally dependent on being acceptable to people with money. If you are not acceptable, you do not get to run. This is the filter nobody wants to name. Before you ever see a name on a ballot, a pre-screening has already happened. The billionaire class and the corporate donor class have already funded or starved out the potential candidates based on whether those candidates can be trusted to not threaten their interests. That is why the candidates from both major parties end up sounding shockingly similar on the issues that actually affect corporate profits. Taxes on the rich, regulation of big industry, antitrust, trade deals, military spending. No matter who wins, the outcomes in those categories barely shift. That is not a coincidence. That is the filter working exactly as designed. You get a choice. You just do not get to choose who is allowed in the race. Now the air gets thinner. A big donor writes checks in the tens of thousands to low millions. When they call a senator's office, the call gets taken. When they express a concern about a piece of legislation, the concern mysteriously becomes a committee discussion the following week. The studies on this are not subtle. A Journal of Politics analysis found that corporate PACs shift their donations almost immediately when a congressperson changes committees. The money follows the power. The donations are not about values. They are transactional. I give you money, you give me access. The system does not even try to hide it anymore. Another study found that for every 1% increase in corporate lobbying spending, that corporation's next year tax rate drops between 0.5 and 1.6%. Read that again. The act of spending money to influence the government produces a direct, measurable financial return on investment in the form of lower taxes. It is one of the best performing investments a large corporation can make. You cannot access that return. You do not have enough capital to participate. So your taxes stay where they are. Theirs keep going down. That is the entire game, in a sentence. Above the donor sits the lobbyist. This is where the writing actually happens. The lobbying industry spends around $4 billion a year in Washington alone. Not on elections, on influence between elections, when nobody is watching. Bills in Congress are often literally written by lobbyists. The actual text, the specific language. Lobbyists draft it, hand it to a friendly congressperson, and the congressperson introduces it as their own. You are electing people to represent you, and those people are pasting corporate legal departments' wish lists directly into federal law, with your name on it, with your taxes paying for it. Healthcare lobbying alone, across insurers, hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies, runs over $1 billion a year. In 2025, the pharmaceutical industry by itself spent over $450 million, $500 million, one industry, 1 year, just to make sure drug prices stay exactly where they are. And they do, every year, because the system is working perfectly. For them. Here, finally, is the top. The game stops pretending at this level. In 2010, a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United gutted what was left of campaign finance law. It ruled that corporations and wealthy individuals can spend unlimited amounts on elections through entities called super PACs. Before Citizens United, there were limits. After Citizens United, there are not. This was not an accident. It was the result of a decades-long legal strategy funded by a small network of wealthy families and conservative legal foundations who wanted exactly this outcome. They got it, and the floodgates opened. Now, a single billionaire can spend $100 million or more on a single election cycle. They can fund attack ads against candidates who disagree with them. They can primary incumbents who cross them. They can fund the think tanks that write the policy. They can fund the media outlets that shape the narrative. They can fund the legal foundations that groom the judges who rule on the law. Journalists looking at the 2016 presidential primary found that fewer than 400 families had contributed nearly half of all publicly disclosed money. 400 families. Out of 330 million people, deciding which candidates got to be serious contenders and which ones got buried. And then above even the billionaire donor is the final level, the people who do not donate at all. You cannot buy your way here. You cannot donate your way here. You either inherit this level, or you build a company so large that the government starts adjusting around you instead of the other way around. These are the people who own the platforms where political debate happens. The banks the government borrows from. The media networks that set the boundaries of acceptable opinion. The supply chains entire countries depend on to eat. They employ half the lobbyists. They fund the think tanks. They sit on the advisory boards. They do not run for office. They do not need to. The office comes to them. When a crisis hits, this is who the Treasury calls. When an industry is about to be regulated, this is who the regulators privately consult. When a foreign policy decision gets made, this is who has the conference call. The people at this level move between government and the private sector like it is one continuous institution. Because for them, it is. There are maybe a few hundred of these people globally. Their children attend the same schools. Their foundations fund each other. And the laws that govern the lives of 330 million Americans are, in any practically honest accounting, shaped around the preferences of that small group. Not because of a conspiracy in a bunker somewhere, because of gravity. Concentrated economic power attracts political power the way mass attracts gravity. It does not have to plot. It just has to exist. So let's drop the illusions. You are at the bottom. The people deciding your healthcare, your taxes, your housing market, your wages, your retirement, your kids' education, your water, your food supply, and your military are at the top. They know each other, they fund each other, they protect each other, and they will happily tell you the system represents you while the numbers say the opposite. Your vote matters the way a single drop of water matters to a flood. Collectively, yes. Individually, no. And the people at the top have spent decades and billions of dollars making sure the flood never reaches them. This is not paranoia. This is the public record. The donation filings are public. The lobbying disclosures are public. The court decisions are public. Every part of this ladder is documented if you are willing to look at it without flinching. The reason it feels like a conspiracy is because nobody who benefits from it wants it described out loud. So it stays unsaid, implied, buried in jargon, dismissed as cynicism whenever regular people start connecting the dots. You just connected them. Subscribe if this channel is describing the country the way it actually is instead of the way you were taught to believe it was. We are not done.